I'm Megan Skidmore, and welcome to the Beyond the Shadow of Doubt. I'm a woman, daughter, sister, spouse, mother, life coach, and person of faith on a mission to normalize asking questions and allowing doubts on a faith journey and all aspects of life. Join me as I bring this traditionally taboo topic out of the shadows of shame and into the light. I firmly believe we normalize through more talking and engaging in discussion. More talking peels back, exposes, and erases the layers of shame associated with asking questions and allowing doubts. When we are more authentic about our journey, we are more powerful because shame has no power in the face of authenticity. Hopeful Spaces is a Dallas Hope Charities component of Hopeful Discussions, sponsored by Mercedes-Benz Financial Services USA. It's a free monthly parent, ally, or caregiver support group facilitated by Megan Skidmore Coaching. Email chc@dallashopecharities.org for more info. First Friday's free coaching, a confidential group to bring all the questions, vent frustrations, share fears, express doubts. Navigating a new and uncertain reality is hard enough. Let's remove the worry of judgment from others. In this group, I will help you help yourself so that you can be there for your child, family, loved ones, and for you too. Click the link in the show notes to sign up. You must complete the agreement. Welcome to today's episode. I have my friend Erryn Stamp with me today, and I'm so thrilled that Erryn is joining me. We met virtually first earlier this year, but we've actually become friends in real life as well. So welcome, Erryn. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Why don't you take a minute and share with us a little bit about you, Erryn?
I'm a trans woman, active in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I've been married to my wife for 12 years. I think we've known each other for a little over 13 years. And then I have 4 kids. I have my oldest from previous marriage, and I born and raised in Texas, but I kind of lived all over after that. And I came out as transgender in spring of 2021 and socially transitioned like 2 years ago. I think it's kind of hard to keep track at some point. For a while, long enough that everyone knows. And I've worked in IT pretty much my whole adult life. There's actually not my intention. I wanted to keep it as a hobby, but I fell into it. And once you've been doing something for 20 years, it's kind of just what you do.
Well, that's a long time. And you're good at what you do.
Yes,
So I really wanted to have you on, Erryn, because you bring such a unique perspective to this discussion of practicing one's faith, of having a faith journey. And I want to normalize how unique those journeys are. And I can honestly say, I don't know anybody else who has had a journey that is just like yours, right? Nobody has. Just like no one's had one like mine. There might be similarities. And I just want you to be able to feel comfortable sharing the highs, the lows, the pain points, and also the joys that come when an individual just surrenders to what is, to what they can feel, their inner wisdom, their inner voice, right? What they've known for however long, right? Oftentimes from youth. And be able to, I think it's important to hear about that, right? Because these can be painful journeys. But I think what motivates them is what we're reaching for, what we hope for, what we feel is on the other side. And I believe it exists, and I want to talk about that and celebrate that. So you mentioned already you are a member of the LDS Church. So you grew up in the LDS Church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Born and raised, family goes way back.
My mom's a convert. She joined when she was 17.
Okay.
So, and my dad, since he was a kid. So yeah.
So you also mentioned that you came out just a few years ago, not that long ago. But when you say that, what you mean is you shared with others how you had been feeling on the inside for, I'm sure, much longer than just 3 or 4 years ago.
Yes. I remember as a child,
Hmm.
this kind of like I would want to be a girl kind of thing, but there wasn't really a vocabulary for that until I knew until I was an adult.
Hmm.
But I remember I was 12 when it became a lot more real.
Can you
And
tell us what you mean by that? What do you mean it became a lot more real?
so I it was that's when I had more issues with my actual body than just, I want to. Before that, it was more like I want to play with the girls. I want to be one of the like as a social thing. And
Uh,
then,
hang out with
um,
the other girls.
yeah.
Okay.
And then it was there was a lot that happened in that year when I was 12.
Hmm.
I started where I think my favorite example is I would have dreams that I was a girl in various scenarios, whatever.
Hmm.
And then I would wake up, and that was the hard part is then waking up from that and being in the body that I'm in.
Hmm.
And it was also when I was 12 years old that I realized that other people could recognize themselves in the mirror. Um,
Wow.
like when you see a TV show and someone like sees their doppelganger or whatever, or that person looks just like them, or sees a photo of themselves they and they say, "Oh, that's me," or "Why do you look
Mhm.
just like me?" When I would look in the mirror, I would have to tell myself that's me. It's very uncomfortable, and it was just something I learned to deal with, and I didn't realize other people didn't have that. And I thought it was just a ridiculous thing that was on TV. And I pointed out to someone, they're like, "You don't know what you look like?" I'm like, but my brain had trouble with that. That's what it couldn't match what it was seeing with what it expected, which is not how I thought of it then. I didn't know how to reconcile it. So I just got really depressed and I didn't know how to talk to anyone about it. It's also when I started around the same time, like getting crushes on boys, which was very new. And so there was just a lot that I was just like, I can't tell anyone. And
Mhm.
if anyone finds these things out about me, they won't be able to love me. And that was something I very much internalized. And um, there was no healthy coping for that. By the
Yeah,
time I was 13, the coping mechanism I had was fantasizing about killing myself.
that is
And
very young to be going through all of this.
I just kind of, I think when I was 17, I told someone about like my mental health struggles, but I never told anyone why. Uh, I struggled really bad in school because that whole what's the point and just going on. And I ended up dropping out my senior year because I did the math and there was no way I was going to be able to graduate. And I happened to have a mentor at the time who he said, "How about you work for me and I will pay for you to take exams that will allow you to test out of the courses you need to graduate." I was like, "Sure, whatever." It gave me something to do. So I helped him teach computer repair to students at Galveston College. And I had that on my resume for a long time because I was like, yeah, before I was technically graduated high school, I was tutoring
Mhm.
college students on these courses. But basically the way it worked is that Texas Tech accepted the credit and then the high school accepted the credit. So, um,
So you were
but
able to get your GED that way?
I was actually a diploma.
It was a diploma.
Yeah, because the high school accepted them as credits and then I graduated or qualified for graduation.
So
Um,
if you don't mind if I pause you for just a minute, that's a lot to happen from the age of 12 to 17.
it is.
Uh, and I want to ask, you had all of these things that you were going through mentally and emotionally. Um, how was it spiritually? in the LDS Church, when you turn 12 is for those that are born male. There's a lot of what do we call it? There's a plan in place, I guess,
There's very much
it,
a plan in place.
for those that are born male in holding and becoming ordained in the priesthood. So what was that like?
It was frustrating, um,
Okay.
because I think the only real friend I had was at church, but I also didn't feel like I belonged where I was. And I didn't really, I want to say it was about 16 and a half maybe, that I just kind of stopped. I would go to the first hour of the sacrament meeting where everyone is, and I would just leave church and hang out at a friend's house that lived near the church because I felt so out of place. Before then, I just kind of followed along.
So you were ordained to the
Yeah.
priesthood, though. Yes. So
Um,
you were ordained
though
as a
I followed the path of the deacon, teacher, priest.
uh-huh,
And I remember not a lot.
really.
Because anywhere I felt really out of place is just kind of foggy now. Like waking up from a dream. There's stuff that's very clear, but I know that like the stuff that sticks out was very much learning, sometimes from being ridiculed, either by my peers or my father, to make sure you're appearing as masculine as possible. It wasn't worded that way, but that is what was being said.
Did you
And
present
because
somewhat feminine at that time?
accidentally sometimes,
Okay.
one of the things that I would do is the way I was wearing like my belt. I would just kind of, the way I kind of like tied it off at the end. There were
Okay.
times where I was thinner as a teen. I still appeared very large. I have a very large rib cage. And, but, so my belt was big. So I just kind of like tied it off at the end. My dad thought that looked gay, and being gay was not okay.
Hmm.
Um, and so, except for like a very few times, I actually, from the ages of like 12 to 15, being at church was somewhat safe compared to being at school or being at home.
Okay.
Um, so it was kind of up and down. At least being at church, I was almost never with my siblings or my parents. And most the young men I was with, I got along with. My best friend was like a few months older than me, and so we were all kind of together.
Okay.
My I think the slowly trying to not participate so much when I was 16 or starting when I was 16, that was about the time my parents got divorced. And so it was then I felt safe to not be there as much. Um, so my dad was very physically and emotionally abusive.
Okay.
And that was like he had some very derogatory nicknames for me that are triggering for some people.
I'm sorry.
And so that was very freeing for me
Mhm.
once he wasn't there. And but I had some experiences growing up in the church that made me not want to leave the church itself so much as um, the people and the way things are actually done is what was really stressful.
Okay.
Um, so
So,
that was, I ended up joining, what were you going to say?
well, I was going to ask, so you said you ordained a deacon, a teacher, and a priest. The next step for someone born as a male is to be an elder and to go on even further, like serve a mission and go through the temple.
I did
Did
not serve a mission.
you didn't go
Um,
through those parts?
I actually joined the Navy right after I graduated.
Okay.
When I was 18,
Hmm.
my little sister, because she needed attention from my parents, accused me of doing things I did not do. I ended up getting kicked out of my mom's house when I was 18, and I stayed with my dad for a little bit, but I tried to avoid being there as much as possible. I ended up joining the Navy right after I could graduate. And I was growing up, I was always told that I was accident prone, or I was just like trying seeking attention, complaining about being in pain. Now it turns out I have a genetic disorder. And so I was only in the Navy for about 5.5 months. And now I fractured my femur and tibia and then two bones in my left foot while in basic training. So I was in
Hmm.
boot camp for almost 6 months and they're like, look, you're not getting better. And so um,
I see.
I did end up getting ordained an elder, but it was after kind of bouncing around for a little bit.
Hmm.
So I stayed with a friend. I was somewhat in contact with a girlfriend I had in high school while I was in the Navy where we were going to stay together. But there were some things that happened where I just didn't want to be part of that anymore. And
Part of the
so I
church,
went,
part of that
yeah,
relationship.
part of that relationship.
Okay.
And so I tried to avoid, I didn't feel comfortable going back to either. I couldn't go to my mom, and I definitely didn't feel comfortable going with my dad.
Okay.
So I stayed with a friend, and this is actually a random story I like to tell. But he was going to go on his mission, and I didn't have the money. I didn't have enough money to stay on my own. And I called a friend. I was living in American Fork, Utah, is where he was, and so that's where I was. And I called a friend of mine. I didn't know anyone else in Utah, so I called a friend of mine that was living in Houston because I grew up in Galveston, and she had a male roommate who was moving out. And I'm like, well, she's fine with having a male roommate. I feel more comfortable emotionally around women. And we were good friends before I left for the Navy. So
Hmm.
I was like, I could come stay with you. And she said, well, actually, we have too much chemistry. I don't think it'd be a good idea. And I was like, what? Uh, okay. And I had no idea how to respond to that. So, but I found that I tended to be clueless to things like that.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I ended up going and moving in with that girlfriend that I didn't want part of that relationship anymore. And her dad took me in, and her and I ended up getting married. And after that, she joined the church. I was ordained an elder. I baptized her and then was ordained an elder. And
Hmm.
we were sealed a year later. And
And for those that are
that,
not of the LDS faith,
um,
sealed is takes place in an LDS temple.
yeah,
It's an ordinance that it's more than marriage. It's connecting to individuals, not just for this life, but for the next life as well, is the belief. So you had
the
already been
till
married.
death do you part, isn't it?
So you'd already been married and you went to the temple later.
Right.
Okay.
So it was not the traditional path. Um, and that her stepfather he had cancer, and he basically hooked me up with the job that he had
Mhm.
because he was terminal. He's like, hey, you can have my job, which was a weird thing to say now looking back.
Mhm.
So yeah, I got this job because this guy was dying, but that's
Oh,
how I fell into working in IT because he said, I know you can do this and you can
oh,
take over the job as I'm leaving. So my now ex-wife she joined the Air Force and we hopped around a little bit, ended up in Hawaii. And that's my oldest child was born on Oahu. And that's where we separated. And that was one of her, other than the fact that the thing that I alluded to that I was not happy with is she has trouble with staying faithful. But
okay.
also one of her complaints about me was that she wished I was more masculine. And I know I've told that to people before. They're like, did she not know you were? And but I think in the beginning she thought, oh, they're just really sweet. But no, I was more feminine than her, and she didn't like that. Really big complaint. She also had another whole list of complaints that some of them were just silly. And but yeah, I ended up moving from Hawaii to Missouri, where I had some business contacts by then. Christmas Day, 2009. And a couple of years later, I met my current wife online, which she hates that I tell people that. She wishes there was some like more,
Different
uh,
story.
yeah, but that was, but that was, we met online. I wasn't technically divorced yet because we had already filed for divorce and then
Mhm.
it ended up getting thrown out because she was supposed to do something she didn't because there's that deadlines with the way it was filed. And so I had to refile. So the way it looks on paper, it looks like I got divorced, immediately got remarried. But there's a lot going behind the scenes thing.
I see.
Uh, but
So
yeah,
I would,
I was gonna say I gave my current wife the list of things that my ex didn't like about me. And
Hmm.
most of them, she was like, that's either not a big deal or she was, that's actually awesome. So that was, yeah.
That's beautiful. I love that. So I'm wondering if you can speak a little to during this time from your youth until, your kind of young adulthood, the times that you were married, got divorced, married again. Can you speak to what your relationship with the church was like, and if it feels appropriate, if that was different than your relationship with God? What were those like as you were navigating these periods of your life?
I can definitely say that there are definitely times where I would say my relationship with the church is not the same as my relationship with God.
Hmm.
Um, but sometimes it does line up, or it has in the past. Right now it doesn't.
Hmm.
But I actually had a lot of support from the church when I was separating from my first wife. I
Hmm.
was actually surprised how much support I had from like the bishop and his counselors. It's when it really started to hit me was about that time how much the fakeness that a lot of people in the church have. That before I would just kind of, it's something that some people innately know. And I didn't realize that I had friends that weren't really my friends. They were just like, oh, we go to church together and we live near each other. So we hang out and do play games, but we're not. I was talking to someone around the time. He's like, well, why are you telling me all this? And I was confused. He was like, is it because you think we're buddies or something? And so I was like, well, ooh, I thought we were. But I started to like kind of distance myself a little bit, except for very specific people. But my relationship with God hadn't changed. It was a very low point, that period of time specifically. I ended up almost killing myself. And that in the long run ended up being an incredible experience. The amount of spiritual help I had. I There were times where following the path of my ex-wife didn't want to fight for custody, and she um, started accusing me of things. She told me the night before that she was going to go to the hospital the next morning. I don't know why she felt the need to tell me all this, but she told me she was going to the hospital next morning to have our daughter looked at because she became convinced that I had molested her. So I was going to do something to talk her out of it or to stop her, because the whole thing just came as a shock. And I remember just stepping forward to say something and then feeling like someone was behind me and very distinctly a voice saying that I'm not going to put you through more than you can handle, which is usually not something that it's one of those cliche Christian things, but it felt very extremely real. And I had just had this relief wash over me and just kind of like let her go. It was a very interesting experience because I had a really positive experience with CPS, which is rare. Um, and I got there were a couple other times where I just felt very strongly that someone else was there. I think
Hmm.
if I hadn't had those opportunities to really be in a place where I could feel that, if I hadn't had those experiences, I wouldn't be alive today. There have been definitely, I've been through more in my life than I could handle if I did not have the spirit to lean on. Um, I did not have a great relationship with the church when after my wife and I separated for a little while because I went to where I had business contacts because that's how you survive. I was technically homeless for a little bit until I was making enough money. I was staying in like someone's like extra room for a little bit and I was sleeping on a couch. And the area that I moved to though was where my ex-wife and I had lived before we moved to Hawaii. So there was a lot of, oh, and a lot of people, oh, where's your beautiful wife at? Which is a weird thing to say altogether. But I didn't know how to have that conversation with those specific people. And so I would just answer honestly, be like, oh yeah, she's in Hawaii right now. But I ended up just kind of not going to church anymore because even the people I did talk to, I felt there's definitely a stigma when it comes to divorced males. There's very much, oh, what did you do? Um, and I did blame myself a lot. I don't anymore, but I did at the time. When I met my wife, I was more active in the church by then because my ex was deployed to Afghanistan. And
Mhm.
I had a kid with me, and I felt it was important for her to go to church. So I was active in the church, but I don't know how much of it was for me at the time. Um,
So it was more for your child than it was
yeah,
for you, for your specific relationship with the church. You know, there's in August of 2024, there were some new updates rolled out to the handbook of the LDS Church, whatever you want to call it, rules, policy, tenets. I don't know if some would consider them doctrine or not, but regardless of what you call them, often the outcome, in other words, how people view those, interpret them, navigate them is the same. Instead of setting New Year's resolutions, I invite you to create vision. Decide what you want, choose what to keep and what to release. Listen to your inner wisdom and then create. Cultivate your mood for 2025. In 1 hour, we will create a digital mood board, kind of like a vision board. It's an opportunity for you to focus on not so much what you do, but instead who you are and who you want to be. Choose to see 2024 for all of the gifts, lessons, and insights it offered. And now choose the mood or the tone you want to cultivate for Set the Mood 2025. Link is in the show notes. If you're not available to join live, please register. All who do will receive a copy of the replay. Go to paperbell.me/Megan-Skidmore. As a person who knows how you have felt inside, how you have identified more with that feminine side from the time you were young, can you share with us those how that affected you to have that
I
policies put in print?
I was frustrated and upset, but I do want to say that I was um, not surprised. I knew there was going to be some kind of change, but it could have gone either direction. And I think that's one of the things that I would like people to understand that are just kind of living within that heteronormative lifestyle
Yeah.
that is that it is constant stress or strain. All it takes is someone to change their mind about something. All it takes is political winds to change, and you don't know where your standing is in your community, whatever that community is, or at work, or amongst your family, because you could easily have family members that take sides. My wife is extremely supportive of me, but I know people that do struggle with that.
What do you mean when you say struggle with that?
As far as weighing their family members looking at the church policies as being doctrine, and so
Mhm,
looking at them following not directly within that. So, well, if this is not what the church wants you to do, it must be a sin.
mhm,
And that's not the way I look at it. And it's difficult to then say, it's not the way I look at it. And it's not just because I'm trying to excuse it for me. It becomes a whole different battle because it was already a battle before.
mhm. Can you share a little bit more about that? I know you are currently actively participating in your local congregation. How do these policies, I'll leave a link in the show notes so listeners can see what these policies are without having, taking the time to go over them in detail here. But how do these specific policies affect you currently, like present day, when you try to actively participate?
I was. basically, before the policies were changed, I was allowed to basically be in primary. My wife and I had a class that was basically it was for the special needs kids that are in our congregation. And part of that is because two of them are ours. My two youngest are affected by autism enough that it's very difficult for them to be in a normal class environment. And when the policies were changed, I was basically told to keep doing what I was doing for now. And then
We
they
can
kind of
stay
slow,
in primary.
yeah, because I wasn't seen as the people that I was over. It's not like I was going to have a huge influence, but I'd been told before that teaching was not a thing I was basically going to be doing again, which is sad. I miss teaching. But
So the policy then, it changed to state that anyone who did not identify with their sex assigned at birth, I don't even know if it says it that specifically.
it doesn't say it that specifically. It says anything if you're take any steps to transition away from your
Okay.
assigned gender at birth. So
Then you
um,
cannot hold a calling, which is a volunteer position, and you cannot hold a calling that is in the primary, and in other words, among the kids, the children,
you can't
correct?
work with children or youth, is what it says.
Children or
And
youth.
then or any gendered calling. And
Correct.
what's interesting about that is it doesn't explicitly say that they don't want you teaching either. But I've been told, and this is even before the policy change, that basically they don't want me speaking in sacrament, even if it's just like bearing my testimony.
Sacrament is the main meeting
Right.
each
Right.
Sunday where the entire congregation meets to not only partake of the bread and the water, but also have uplifting spiritual talks given, prayers are given, hymns are sung, and so on. So you are technically not permitted to participate in that.
Yes. After a couple weeks, I was released, and then someone was called to basically serve in the calling that I had. My wife still has the calling, and then I was told that I can be in there and help as a parent, which feels kind of weird because now there was another parent that was already in there about half the time.
Mhm.
So sometimes at this point, there's just as many parents as there are children, and but I was recently asked, and due to my children being sick and then being innocent illness off and on, I have actually been to church since then. But it was I was recently asked to be like technology specialist,
Mhm.
so they can start doing some kind of broadcast at least once a month with people who are like homebound and stuff like that,
Mhm.
which I accepted, but it does still there is still a little bit of bitterness there at not being allowed to teach. And
Mhm.
but the what I was told was that if I am speaking in front of a congregation or if I am teaching a class, then that has an implication that the church condones transitioning or is teaching transition, which is kind of frustrating. And when I was told this, I was told that they were aware that there are youth in our congregation who are um, thought to have gender dysphoria and that I would not be a good influence. I made the case to the bishop that allowing me to participate more means that when they do make decisions on their own, because right now they're coming to church because their parents want them to. When
Mhm.
they do start making those decisions on their own, if they see me participating as just another member of the ward, they're more likely to stay. If I'm not allowed to participate, they're
Right.
more likely to leave because they see me whether or not you want them to. Whether or not you want them to see me in any specific capacity, they still see me there. And to see me as a third class citizen is still showing something. It's showing that they're It's not just that, oh, the church is, it's this almost as black and white, where either the church condones or teaches gender transition, or the church shuns it. And there's this strict black and white there, that there is no, oh, by the way, like we'd prefer you not do this, but
Mhm.
how about we go ahead and acknowledge that everyone's different and that
Yeah,
mental health does matter, and that's things like gender are a lot more complicated than we thought or that we like to admit.
definitely. I mean, the word transitioning, by definition, there's nothing black and white about going through any type of a transition. And to kind of cast it in that light in the wording is a disservice because for some for someone just wearing more feminine clothing in a more social transition, presenting, looking more feminine is enough. That's all they want to do. It's their clothing. So that might mean, wearing a skirt or a dress versus pants. And for others, it might mean, I mean, it's a spectrum. It might mean taking it a step further and introducing hormone therapy. And it could go all the way up to surgical procedures. But I'm afraid because there's so much fear-driven rhetoric out there, both in political circles and in religious circles. I'm not going to go into that. That's not my purpose here on this podcast. But because so much of what is out there is so fear-driven, I think people go to what for them seems very scary and they stay in that place rather than coming from a place of interest, curiosity, educating themselves, which requires coming from a place of genuine care and love
For a
and
lot of
human
people,
interest.
empathy doesn't come natural.
Yeah, that's
Um,
fair. But I think,
there's a, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
There's an exercise involved when it comes to imagining what someone else is going through. The reason why I will bring up that I didn't recognize myself in the mirror is because now I do. I remember exactly when I did. It
Mhm.
was February of 2022. I'd been on estrogen for 9 months, and I remember I just gotten ready for bed, and I was walking out of the bathroom and walked by the mirror, and I was shocked. And I looked at myself and I recognized myself. And anyone else who, I don't expect anyone who identifies with the gender they were assigned at birth to understand what that's like. But I throw that out there because I think that looking at yourself in the mirror is a universal experience in our culture. It's something that, in not just our culture,
Mhm.
um, it's a thing. People, you look at yourself, you make sure you're presentable. Um,
Yeah,
and to not be able to see yourself is very frustrating. But that should be something where someone can see that and say, okay, that would be something that would be stressful to me. That depersonalization is a legitimate problem.
yeah.
That level of depersonalization does often lead to suicide. And so the idea of, well, as long as, in fact, all you have to do is go back to acting like you're a boy, and then we'll accept you all the way again. I don't think people have any idea how much strain that's putting on people.
Which is really
Um,
just them not being willing to feel uncomfortable. It's that
yeah,
it's a human response, but it's an emotionally immature response to expect someone to change the way they live, the way they speak, the way they believe, the way they behave, so that you can feel more comfortable. And I think what you said about you're talking about this connection between gender affirming care and mental health, and I would go so far as to say emotional health and spiritual health as well. And I just want to throw out there that it's not people who get put in this classification of being part of the LGBTQ plus community. It's not only for them. Gender affirming care, whether people realize it or not, takes place among those who identify in a heteronormative way,
it's
right?
very true. And you see
Anybody
so
who,
much of it.
right, a woman who chooses to either decrease or augment the size of their breasts, that is a form of gender affirming care. They are affirming how they feel on the inside through external demonstration, which is a very personal individual choice. But because they identify as hetero, it is more socially acceptable. Similar with, males who maybe are, it's in their DNA, they have male pattern baldness or something. I know that there are procedures that they can opt for that will change the way that looks, even if it's not on, it can't be changed on a DNA level, but it can be changed in other ways. I don't know all the ways. I know there are topical
Mm,
creams, medicines, probably oral things you can take, and even surgeries. I've heard of hair transplants. All of
yeah,
these are gender affirming care options that you don't have to be LGBTQIA plus to participate in.
that's actually one of my favorite random facts about transphobic influencers is that Elon Musk had hair transplants and takes testosterone supplements, but is very against gender affirming care.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that it's important to help expand paradigms, to help educate. And now it's up to the individual person to choose whether to take that in, internalize it, what to think about it. And, change takes time. Expanding one's viewpoint, expanding one's perception, it takes time, and it takes the skill of leaning into uncomfortable emotions. And at the heart of that is being willing to admit, okay, I was wrong before. I didn't see something before, or I didn't see it in that way, and now I do, and life can go on. Remedy what was maybe people that you may have hurt or toes you may have stepped on, but then move forward. I want to focus on, what has this done for you? Like, you have been going through these feelings, you have been experiencing something from the time that you were very young, and it was meaningful enough to you and important enough to you that you've acted on it and you're in your adult years. And there is a why behind that. What has that done for you? Why did you went through a lot? Like, you probably lost some relationships, some friendships, maybe even working relationships. I don't know. I don't want to fill in the blanks, but can you speak to that? Like, the joy that you have surely found on the other side.
I It is a huge contrast because I had coming from a very conservative environment, both at home and church and just friendships growing up. I had internalized a lot of that. And so I also want to speak to everything that people, when it comes to that uncomfortableness, we go through that ourselves in that journey of accepting yourself. For me, it was, there was a lot of, even when something did kind of feel good, there was a lot of denial. And the weirdest thing is I was trying to kind of find a way to find relief without admitting anything. And I remember because I was open with my wife about being bisexual. She'd always kind of teased me about being the woman in the relationship, which did not offend me whatsoever. And so she was like, why don't you like paint your nails or something? Like, I think that visiting that feminine side of you might actually really help, like expressing how feminine you are might actually really help you. And so she brought out some like nail polish, and it's not the first time I had my nails painted because I have daughters, but she had this like a collection, and she expected me to pick out something black or something. But there was this really pretty purple, and I was like, oh, that. And for
Yeah.
some reason, that was the moment for me. So it was something about looking down and seeing my purple fingernails that, I mean, there was already a lot of strain against that dam that was holding everything back. And that's what broke it, which is, it feels
Isn't
a
that
little ridiculous.
interesting? No, something is
Uh,
some take for granted, so easily take for
uh,
granted for you was this pivotal
but
moment.
it,
That's
and it,
great.
but it wasn't just that, oh no, my fingernails were painted now. It was okay to feel good about it. And
Mm,
it wasn't just because my kids were being silly. It was because that's what I wanted.
mhm.
And that was my first time with and I didn't have vocabulary yet, but that was my first time with gender euphoria. I
Mm.
was just so happy seeing something about me that was the way I wanted it to be. And
And right there, that's the joy.
and
Something as simple as painting your nails,
it was really simple,
but it was true
but
joy.
it's also scary. I read a metaphor somewhere else that I don't know have I have no idea who to attribute it to. But I think it's important in this discussion of joy, in which someone described gender dysphoria as growing up in a cave and never seeing light. That you're always in this cave and it's dark, and you think this cave is your entire world. And all of your family lives in, and they act like the cave is normal. And so you think the cave is normal. Everything's dark, but life is dark. Then you find a spot in the cave where it's caved in, and you're able to leave the cave and you walk out into this beautiful field. And it's wonderful and it's amazing, but it's also bright and it's overpowering, and you're not used to being just out in the open. And
Mm.
so you go back in. You go back in your cave because that's what's familiar. And but you want to go back out there again. It's better there. It's just scary. And so you go out there again and a little bit more. And each time you don't want to go back in the cave anymore. And eventually you just live out in the light. And that's very much what it's like. Because being out in the light a little bit more. In fact, being out was as I was saying that, I was like, not just out of the closet, but being out of that shell yourself, where you're no longer denying yourself to yourself
It's
and
the authenticity piece.
feeling like it's okay.
Yeah.
I know for me it was just like a little step at a time. And I also, for even after coming out, I didn't want to socially transition. And not just because a bunch of people at church thought it was bad, but it was terrifying. Huge
Yeah.
changes involved. There are members of my family I talked to at the time that I don't talk to now. I don't have contact with any of my like immediate family anymore, but some of that is because of things beforehand, before I transitioned. But there are also friends and family members that I lost that I was scared of losing those relationships. And it was worth it. Um,
I'm in such awe and have learned so much from the transgender friends that I have met and made. Their ability to be true to themselves, to step into all of those scary places is just awe-inspiring. I just don't think it's very well known how much courage it takes to be true to one's own inner self, inner voice in the face of so much potential loss, socially, you know, religiously, all of the different things. But I think that's where the true joy comes is being authentic to yourself.
it's
Taking those steps is what makes it real.
it's true. And it was weird, especially because my name sounds nothing like what the name my mommy gave me,
Uh-huh.
my dead name or necronym. And getting used to that was interesting because that's the name I picked. I want to be called that. I want to be Erryn. But there's little things that the first time you call yourself that in your head, and then the first time when someone you live with hears your old name and wonders who that is.
That's great. I love
Um,
that.
it was actually an easy transition for my wife and I because not only do I look very different, because I'm really sensitive to estrogen. This is not what I looked like a few years ago, which very fortunate for me. But I act totally different. And I remember one of the things that I talked to my wife about early in just medical transitioning when it came to hormone therapy was that I felt like I'd been lying, or that I kind of tricked her into being like in a queer marriage or whatever. And she said, first off, you being trans explains a lot. Like I should not be surprised by any of this.
Mhm.
Um, but also there were times when early in our marriage, when our relationship was hard, which part of my story that I haven't gone into is there was a time where my son's leg broke when he was little, and I was accused of breaking it. That's not what happened, but we were stressed all the time. It took forever to get that resolved. That's how I was finally diagnosed with genetic disorders because my son was injured, not because I was, but our life was really stressful. And she said that every now and then, the person you're becoming now would come out, and that would make everything worth it.
That's great.
And
I love that.
every now and then, I still have this paranoia because some things are just drilled into you for years. That's how it is.
Hmm.
That she resents me or something for transitioning, but it's definitely not. I am, even when I'm really depressed now, because life can still throw things at you, way happier than I was a few years ago.
That's
And
great.
it's easy to lose that perspective. It's easy to say, well, because you get stuck in where you are. But there's still things where, to go back to that joy, where it's silly, but now I get junk mail now in my real name, and it's stupid because I have to throw it away. But I'm like, oh, so this is the thing. I recently got a passport. I never left the country before, so I was like, well, but now being in Texas, I very much feel like I should have one because I might lose my driver's license that says female on it. But getting that passport was really exciting for me.
Hmm.
And so it's just all those little things that were, this
Yeah.
is me, and this is me being recognized as me. And
As much
um,
pain as can be associated with a faith journey at times, like all of the questions that can come up, and the doubts that might surface. I think where the pain comes in is feeling like you can't address them or acknowledge them, right? It's beautiful to hear these moments of joy. The last
and
question,
there's a loneliness to it,
yeah, for sure. And
not
so
being
I'm
able to talk to
grateful
people.
that you are willing to talk about that and bring it, raise the awareness. But just to conclude, tell us in your own words, what does it mean to live beyond the shadow of doubt?
I think that it really comes down to letting go of what you had imagined because there's this proverbial wall that we've put up to say we
Hmm.
can't go over there because there's monsters there. But you can't live in the wall forever.
That's so
Um,
that's a perfect way to put it.
so
And then when you
it
go there, you realize there's not really any monsters. That's great.
it's about not having that surety anymore
Yeah.
and stepping out of it.
Well, thank you so much for sharing, Erryn. I'm so grateful to hear more of your story. I know that you will touch others' hearts. So, can I ask you a few for fun questions to
Yes.
finish up and just let our guests, our listeners get to know you a little bit more? Tell us what your favorite book is
Says in the Galaxy by Heinlein, Robert Heinlein.
and tell us,
Just
are you an introvert or an extrovert?
I'm an introvert, but I do crave being social. It's just a lot.
So you know your limit.
Yeah.
Are you a night owl or a morning lark?
My wife would disagree with me, but I'm definitely more of a night owl. She just likes to stay up all night.
She's an extra night owl. Okay, who's your favorite artist?
I'm gonna be really cheesy, and it's actually one of my kids.
That's not cheesy.
Um,
I'm
yeah, it's
actually
actually
great.
my 16-year-old Alex is extremely talented. They go through phases of saying they're not, just not doing anything, but yeah.
Awesome. And who's your celebrity crush?
David Tennant.
Oh, that was fast. No hesitation. Do you do still or carbonated water or are you a diet soda fan? What's your favorite beverage?
I might be addicted to caffeine a lot, but it's usually I have some energy drinks I like, but usually it's the Mountain Dew or Dr. Pepper. If I but part of the addiction for me isn't just caffeine, it's the carbonation
Hmm.
a lot. I love
Busy.
it. The texture and
Okay. And finally, tell us the furthest place that you've traveled.
Hawaii.
Hawaii. And you didn't just travel there, you
Oh, I
lived
lived there for
there.
2.5 years.
What a dream. Well, Erryn, if people who are listening wanted to reach out to you with questions, what would be the easiest way?
The easiest way is actually Facebook.
Oh,
I exist elsewhere, but I get lazy and just go back to Facebook.
I'll leave your Facebook link in the show notes. Erryn, it's been wonderful to have this conversation. Thank you for being brave and opening your heart up to all of us so we can understand better and love better.
Thank you.
Beyond the Shadow of Doubt podcast is a proud member of the Dialogue Podcast Network, which is part of the Dialogue Journal found at dialoguejournal.com. Founder Eugene England was a Mormon writer, teacher, and scholar who wrote, "My faith encourages my curiosity and awe. It thrusts me out into relationship with all creation and encourages me to enter into dialogue. My hope is that this podcast is an extension of that vision." Visit meganskidmorecoaching.com to find this podcast and additional free resources, including the link for a complimentary coaching session. Follow me on Facebook or Instagram for more, or to send me a DM. Help the podcast grow. Please follow, review, and share with a friend.